Hi, this is the remainder of Chapter 1 to talk about the theorists that we will cover for a lot of this semester. So, the ones with the asterisks are the ones that, again, we will talk about multiple times throughout the term. The others, Freud, behaviorism, social learning theory, will only be mentioned in this first chapter. All right. So Sigmund Freud, as you can see, was alive during the turn of the century. He had his own private practice. He specialized in people with nervous disorders, things that we might call like extreme anxiety. And he would hypnotize them and get deeper into their brain and find out, what happened to you in the past that would let us understand what's happening to you now. So he was very developmental in that way, where he believed that to understand your current issues, we need to get deeper into the past. He's our first stage theorist, and here are his stages. So he covered birth through adolescence. And again, I'm not going to go deep into each of these, but you can kind of see by the names of pretty much what's going on. Children have an oral fixation, then they learn to use the toilet, they have a fascination with their bodies, they have a period of calm, and then another period of fascination with their bodies and again, relationships. Okay, so the importance of Freud is that he was a teacher of Erik Erikson. And Erik Erikson is a very important child development theorist. As you can see, he was born or alive most of the 1900s. He was our first lifespan theorist, so you'll see how he differs from Freud, where he continued on through adulthood. He didn't really have a college degree, but he observed, and through his observations, he learned about different cultures and how we developed our identity. So he had 8 stages, where Freud only had 5. Within each of these stages, a conflict is experienced, and he called it a psychosocial conflict, a conflict between the psychological part of the child and the social part of their environment. And he worded it as kind of positive versus negative outcomes. He believes this conflict is born within all of us to go through it. Everyone is going to go through it no matter what, but your outcome is going to be dictated by the culture you live in. So that was how he really differed from Freud, besides, going through the lifespan, is he took culture into account. Freud really only looked at the age and the stage that the child was in. So here are Erickson's stages. We will cover the first 5, so all the way up through adolescence. And again, you can see how they're all kind of worded in a way that's positive versus negative. Okay, so another stage theorist is Jean Piaget, who was again alive through most of the 1900s. He did have an educational background. He was trained in biology, and he started to think about how do we as humans adapt to our environment. He's considered one of the most influential child development theorists. He was criticized because he studied his own daughters, but his theory is able to be applied to a lot of children, and he did update his theory, which we're still kind of trying to go through. A lot of it was about memory, so they're still trying to go through all of his research. So his theory believed that children actively construct their own knowledge as they manipulate and explore their world. They're active participants. They manipulate, they're hands on in exploring their world. He also was one of the first to say, children don't think like adults, they understand very differently. And that thinking process has to develop over time as they get older. So he had 4 stages of cognition. And again, those are listed for you here. I have videos on Blackboard, and we'll be going over these in detail as we go through the chapters. But you can see he kind of stopped at the 4th stage and believed that was the 4th and final stage from 11 years onward. And again, there's videos for you on Blackboard. So Vygotsky, born the same year as Piaget but died a lot sooner, He was born in Russia. He was born in a collectivist society where it was a lot about the good of society rather than the individual child. He and Piaget read each other's work, and they're considered a good complement or supplement of each other in terms of cognitive development. They both approach it as a combined approach to understanding cognition. So let's see a little bit about Vygotsky. Again, he's interested in how do we pass our information? How do we pass culture to the next generation? Well, he believed that we did it through being active beings and believed that cognitive development is a very social process. So we'll talk about his zone of proximal development as we get further into the chapters. Now, before we can talk about attachment, we have to talk about ethology. And again, ethology is the study of animal behavior. We first started with survival behavior and evolutionary, Darwinism. And over time, they were interested, how do animals survive? Well, Lorenz was a theorist who came up with the term imprinting, and he believed that, for example, baby birds imprint on their mother, where they start this kind of reflexive following behavior of their mother to ensure their own survival. So Bowlby, he decided, is that also applicable to babies? Do they do specific things to maintain their survival? He also, similar to Freud, believed that early experiences have a huge influence on our later experiences. How we develop our relationships within the first few years of life affects how we develop our relationships with everyone else moving forward. So he focused on the human relationship, and early research of his focused only on the mother, but over time it started to look at more of the fathers and overall caregivers. And again, with the belief that early social attachment is crucial for normal development. Children need that strong foundation of attachment in order to move forward in a social environment. Bowlby came up with the four phases of attachment that he believed happened over the first 2 years of life and then led us in through the rest of our experiences on how to develop relationships. So, again, we'll go over this in good detail in chapter 7. Now, his video clip will also be on Blackboard. Mary Ainsworth is one of the few female theorists that we find, and she studied under Bowlby. She noticed something missing, which was the security of attachment. Why are attachment relationships so different? So she categorized four styles of attachment: secure, and then three styles of insecure: avoidant, resistant, and disorganized, disoriented. So again, we'll go over those in good detail in chapter 7. And Yuri Bronfenbrenner. So he only died, about 15 years ago, and he took a different approach to theory than all the other ones we've been reviewing so far. He looked at influences, systems that influence who we are as a developing person. He again called them systems, but they're contexts like family, education, the community, um, our parents' jobs, the government, right? All of these have bidirectional relationships with the child. So here are his systems, and we're going to go a little deeper into this because this is the only chapter that he's talked about, but I do feel like his theory is applicable and you'll want to be able to use it throughout your assignments. He believed we grew with or we are influenced by these systems, and each system is very different. Your microsystem is individual relationships. The mesosystem is relationships between those microsystems. So you have a relationship with mom, with dad, their relationship is a mesosystem. The exosystem is a step removed from the child, typically like the parent's workplace or extended family that are not typically involved daily. The macrosystem involves things like values and laws, and the chronosystem is over time. So, what if we took a issue like divorce and looked at how that impacted all of a child's systems. So I have a little depiction for you. So I decided to spin a positive divorce. The child has a positive microsystem with mom, a positive microsystem with dad, and again, you can think of microsystem like a direct relationship. Now, because the child has those microsystems have relationships, and that is called a mesosystem. And in this situation, the parents are getting along, they're communicating, they don't want to speak negatively about each other, and so they're both again contributing to the child in a positive manner. And their relationship is positive. Now, they do need to finalize their divorce. So they go to family law court. And again, that's a step removed from the child. The child may never go to family law court, but the decisions made there, like the child custody arrangement, are going to trickle down and affect the child. Now, when you think of the macro system, current family law tries to have a child spend as much time with both parents as possible, as long as it's in the child's best interest. And again, that falls within the macro system of how we look at the value of parenting. But if you go back in time, think of the chrono system, courts would automatically grant custody to mothers. It was just this automatic practice to give mothers custody, and dads were just kind of flailing in the wind. Well, dads did a lot of work over the last, 50 plus years to have a role within custody. So, again, that change is definitely seen in terms of divorce. All right. So now, behaviorism, I have this example on Blackboard. So hopefully you can look at it and see what is this an example of? Well, you might see that it's an example of classical conditioning. So in the clip, Jim keeps providing Dwight with Altoids every time he turns on his computer or shuts it down. So with a dog, and this is what Pavlov's dog is, they noticed that the dog would salivate every time he saw the bone, but he wouldn't when he heard a bell. So they thought, okay, let's condition the dog. Let's ring the bell every time we show him the bone. So over time, we can take away the bone, and just by ringing that bell, we can have him salivate. Now, teachers do this, right? We might blow a whistle or flash lights in the classroom for children to freeze or, time to clean up. That's a way of classically conditioning children. And social learning theory, along with behaviorism, as I mentioned earlier, are only mentioned in chapter one, but they're great theories to look at. Behavior modification came from social learning theory, things like time out or removing a child from a situation, giving them a calm down and a time to reflect. Bandura brought in imitation and observational learning. So again, you're more than welcome to refer to this theory, but this is the only chapter that it will be covered in. So, last section of development, we talked about, is the theory continuous or discontinuous? Do they believe there's one course of development for all children, or do all children go through many different courses? And what do they believe about the influence of nature or nurture, or do they think both? So I've kind of half filled in the chart here so we can kind of have a discussion, even though this is a video, but maybe you can kind of see patterns. So notice with Piaget, he's discontinuous because he follows stages. But he also believes that children all go through the same stages, so there's one course of development. Well, you see the same thing with Erikson. Erikson believes that there's also one course of development, all children go through the same stages, so he is also a discontinuous theorist. What about nature and nurture? Well, as you can kind of see with the trend here, he also believes in nature versus nurture. Vygotsky, he's a little bit different. He's both continuous and discontinuous. Continuous in the fact that we just keep adding more and more knowledge from our interactions, but discontinuous in the fact that he does acknowledge that language is acquired in a stage-like manner. So, what do we think of in terms of his courses? Well, he doesn't follow the same pattern. He believes in many different courses. Bowlby and Ainsworth, that one's going to actually surprise you. So let's go ahead and look at these answers. So again, we see almost the same with Erikson and Piaget, both stage theorists. Vygotsky, not a stage theorist, believes there's many possible outcomes, but believes nature and nurture play a role. Bowlby and Ainsworth, again, also believe in the continuous and discontinuous approach to theory, but believe that it is one course of development and nature and nurture. And Bronfenbrenner is a little bit different. He's like a snapshot in time. So he doesn't really look at it as continuous or discontinuous. But again, there's many possible courses because there's many possible, you know, many different people. But as we can see, nature and nurture is believed by all theorists to have a role in our development. Email me with any questions.